So the question becomes, how do we solve the problem? Well, there's a couple approaches. In the past, when the U.S. has had trouble, you tend to hear from the politicians and the economists, and they basically say, let's grow our way out of this. Have you heard that? Let's grow. So the thesis is, if we can grow the economy, we can get out of this mess. The problem is that even if we had double-digit growth, and what was our growth this past quarter? Around 3%? If you had double-digit growth for the next 10 years, you couldn't grow your way out of this. And nobody's projecting double-digit growth. Have you heard politicians and others talk about raising taxes? The hypothesis is, okay, we need some more money, let's raise taxes. Look at what the tax rates would have to go to in order to reach balance. On the low end, you would go from 10% at the lowest bracket, you'd have to go up to 25%. On the highest income bracket, you'd have to go from 35% to 88%. And your corporate tax would have to go from 35 to 88. If that happened, what would our economy look like? We'd be in shambles. The average family would be destroyed. We couldn't be an economic competitor on the global level. There's a big point here. There's a difference between tax rates and tax revenue. Now, I'm going to give you a quiz. Which marginal tax rate do you think produced the most tax revenue? 70% under President Carter or 35% under President Bush? All right, you've been through this presentation before. This is a trick question because normally you would think, well, if we have a higher tax bracket, right, more taxes we charge people, we'll get more revenue. But I want you to look at this chart. Over the last 60 years, no matter what the marginal tax rate has been, historically we only tend to collect about 19% of GDP. So let's look at this one. Here's Carter right here, and here's Bush up here. It was the same. Because what happens is when these tax rates go up and down, people adjust. And they figure out ways to either take some money off the table for the government or to put it into productive efforts and get more revenue. So the point is, you can't get there by increasing taxes. It just won't happen. Historically, we're going to end up at about 19% of GDP in terms of what we actually collect. Now you've heard about the value-added tax. The thesis here is, well, let's just take and add a consumption tax on top of everything else, kind of like they do in Germany. The reality is you would have to get at 18%. You'd have to take whatever you're spending now and all your taxes and then charge another 18% for everything you purchase in order to get the balance. Now, what do you think what happened to the average household if they charged if they got charged another 18% on what they spent? Be devastating. And again, we would be non-competitive in a global economy. Well, what about cutting spending? How about that? The hypothesis is, let's get Congress to cut spending. Now here's the reality. Congress has not cut spending year to year in 45 years. And here's the reason. Folks get elected to Congress in order to bring benefits back to their state or their district. So we'll cut in your district, but we're not cutting in mine. And that's where we're kind of at right now. There's a lot of talk about cutting spending, but it's very difficult to do unless it's in your district instead of mine.